Well, I mean, if we look at the actual title of Federalist, we see that that title is in fact dishonest as well. Federalism truly, in its definition, is about states' rights, and yet the people in support of the Constitution have the title of the Federalists, and the Anti-Federalists had to adopt Anti-Federalists. So yes, there was definitely dishonesty when it came to titles during the constitutional debates.
Even though it was dishonest, you could see pseudonyms from both sides, not only the Anti-Federalists. James Madison often signed the papers Publius. So it wasn't only the Anti-Federalists who didn't want people to judge them. The Federalists also used these pseudonyms too.
And in response to the second part of your question, today, because media is so much more readily available to us through the sources such as the internet and, for example, blogs, we need to know where this source comes from in order to know that the opinions they are stating have some sort of factual support and could be said to be credible.
Edmund Burke states actually that the media is turning into the fourth branch of our government. The media is so heavily involved today in debates and like the Federalist and Anti-Federalist debates that they know exactly who say things because they focus on it for infotainment and for money.
Well, in addition to my colleague's point, news actually serves as a check on government because it monitors and tells the people who are going to elect certain parts of our government and makes them realize that the people within their nation are hearing about their policies.
You talked about popular sovereignty contract theory. Can you be more politically oriented in why it would be advisable to go to state conventions rather than state legislatures for ratification?
For one, the state legislatures, with the implementation of the Constitution, would actually be losing power that they had under the Articles of Confederation. For example, under the Articles of Confederation, the national government could not tax the citizens. This was up to the individual state governments. And thus, had the Constitution been sent for ratification to the state legislatures, most likely the Constitution would not have ended up being ratified because the state legislatures would not have wanted to lose this power.
Most state ratifying conventions weren't exactly a unanimous vote. In fact, only one was in Delaware at a 30-0 vote. And this reflects that ideal that even the state delegates that we elected in order to ratify this Constitution were very divided amongst themselves about exactly what they wanted within this Constitution. And if it wasn't for advertisements like the preamble and the Federalist Papers, it's very likely that our Constitution may not have been ratified even by these delegates.
To go off my colleague Alexander's point, we see that North Carolina actually had to have two state ratifying conventions because the first one, they didn't ratify the Constitution. That's how different in opinions they have.
The key component to the state ratifying conventions was the fact that it involved the people. It expanded the scope to the people so the people could be involved in the government. We can see this in Federalist 39 as well as Federalist 46. The government is substantially dependent on the great body of the citizens of the United States.
Why do you think that the framers sent the Constitution to the states with neither an endorsement nor a condemnation? Was this a wise decision? Why? Why not?
Well, each state, we can see by looking at the results of the yeas and nays for the Constitution actually being ratified, that each state was so different in their agreement on the Constitution that it would be hard for them to, if they went one way, some states would agree with it, and if they went the other way, you could be appeasing to a whole other group of states. So this was actually a good thing not to send the Constitution with any extra add-ons so that the states could make their own decisions about it.
To bolster my colleague Liz's point, we have to realize that the state of Rhode Island was incredibly unsupportive of our Constitution, and that it really took pressure from other states to ratify it, to really get them to eventually come down to that 34 or 32 vote when they did ratify the Constitution. And because of such states that were in firm negation of our Constitution, it was definite that we didn't want to make them feel even more pressured by the people they didn't support, considering the fact that there was already a lot of pressure in that direction.
Also, furthermore, they neither endorsed nor negated the Constitution because this provides an additional explicit entrance, the blocks legitimate entrance into a social contract, because the states and their citizens were able to decide on the merits of the Constitution for themselves rather than having these delegates tell them what they should do.
Although there was no endorsement attached onto the Constitution, we can see a direct endorsement to the Constitution in the Constitution, which is the preamble. The preamble was made to, as kind of an advertisement, to appease to the states and let them know, give them kind of a summarized version of the Constitution and what it entailed, while including individual rights and the common good.
What role did slavery play in the ratification process?
As seen with the 3/5 compromise, slavery decided on representation within the House of Representatives in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution.
Slavery was definitely a compromise between north and southern states in order to ratify the Constitution. If we look specifically at Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of our Constitution, we see the first right listed before the Bill of Rights is the 1808 clause, the clause that guarantees that southern states, the slave trade will be eliminated by 1808, but that we cannot touch the right of being able to hold slaves from that.
How do those provisions affect the ratification process?
They-
Were they issues or were they?
Slavery was definitely an issue at the Philadelphia Convention, but it was also an issue that they couldn't have solved at the convention itself. So that's why they needed to compromise the issue, making a compromise, as Joseph Ellis stated, the Constitution wasn't made to solve particular problems, but set up debate in the future, and that's exactly what the Fugitive Slave Clause did.
And in the ratification, because of the compromises of the 3/5 compromise and the 1808 clause, this made the Constitution more appealing to the southern states because they would still be able to continue using slaves to grow cotton and on their plantations. And also for the northern states, they weren't taking away any of their rights as both for taxation and representation. It was 3/5. It wasn't 3/5 for either or.
I respectfully disagree with my colleague Inez. I do believe that the founding fathers were expecting slavery to slowly die out as they became less efficient. However, the invention of the cotton gin in the 19th century was really what led to that separation between the North and the South and that reinvigorated move to take in slaves.